Hi everybody, I'm Mike McCrory and this is Would You Make It? I have this old kitchen table that someone has asked me to restore. It's probably 100 years old or even older than that. This is the original table right here, and it's an expandable table that used to have a couple of leaves and they've gone missing. So I've made a couple of additional leaves. There's one there, another one over here. So this is white oak, that I know for sure, and I tried to match it with the original table, which I think is white oak because it looks very similar. However, there's a piece over here that looks like it might have been replaced. It almost looks like red oak. Not sure about this piece here as well. So I'm going to try to get everything more or less the same color, and I'm going to do that through a chemical aging process. First of all, I want to make these newer pieces look a little bit older, a little bit like that. And I want to see if I can change the color of this strip and the color of that strip a little bit so that they are a little bit more uniform. This piece over here, right here, was badly separated at each end. So I removed it just by prying it off, and then I jointed the two edges, and then I've glued it back together. So that looks pretty clean now. Everything's a uniform thickness, so now it's really just a matter of matching the color, staining it, and applying a finish, and then reassembling it. So let's get started. Now, the way that I'm going to age the wood is using a chemical reaction, and I'm going to do that with the use of some baking soda mixed with water. And what I've got here, I don't want to overdo it. So what I've got is a mixture that's about a half a cup of water with a teaspoon of baking soda. How do I know that's the right amount? Well, I really don't. It's a little bit of trial and error. So what I did a couple of days ago, I did a little trial, and this is with 3 teaspoons of baking soda to a half a cup of water, and that's too dark. This is what the wood looks like. This is the white oak, the new white oak, and this is what the wood looks like just with stain on it. This is with baking soda and then stain applied on top of that. So I think that's too much, so that's why I've backed it off, and I'm going to use 1 teaspoon. So I'm going to just brush it on, and I want to put a little bit more on this lighter strip that I suspect is red oak, and I'm going to just brush it on. And I'll let that sit. And then I want to do the same over here on this strip that's a little bit lighter than the piece that's beside it. And I think it's a good idea not to have an exact straight line as if I'd masked it, because that's just going to emphasize the fact that it's a different piece of wood. So I'm going to kind of feather it in just by brushing lightly onto the next piece. And I'll do the same here. And I'll just let that sit for a while, for about an hour. That should be enough for the reaction to take place. I'm going to do the same on the new white oak. And now I'm going to brush the entire piece. So I've got an even coating. And normally I would do the other piece as well, but I'm going to leave it untouched just so that when I come back, we can compare the piece that doesn't have any chemical treatment with the other piece, just to see the difference that it made. So it's been about 45 minutes, and you can see a pretty dramatic change in the color of this piece where I applied the baking soda. And this is the original. I think I'm going to tone it back a little bit for the second piece, and I'll dilute the baking soda. And you can see for the original pieces, I think it's a little bit harmonized, but there still is a difference, but I think it'll be fine after I've applied the stain. What I'll do now is I want to neutralize the baking soda and water mixture, so I'll apply a little bit of vinegar and water just to neutralize it and equalize out the pH level. And then I'll let that dry overnight, and then tomorrow I'll sand it, and then it'll be ready to apply the stain. All right, this is the next day, and the baking soda and vinegar concoctions have dried, and you can see the result. The original wood is pretty much the same color as this piece of new wood, so I think it's pretty much good to go. I've sanded the pieces, and the next step is to apply some sanding sealer. This is a Minwax pre-stain conditioner that I'm using, and it helps to ensure that you get a more even coat of the stain, and it helps to prevent blotchiness. Here I've already stained the two new pieces of wood, and now I'm putting stain on the older pieces. And it turns out that it's matching pretty nicely. I'm applying the stain pretty liberally, and then I'll wipe it up with a paper towel afterwards. I let the stain dry for 24 hours overnight. Then I gave the boards a light sanding, and now I'm applying the first coat of polyurethane. To get good results, it's really important to apply very thin coats of polyurethane. Some people like to thin it down. I didn't do that here, but I was careful not to apply it too thick. Alright, so I've got 4 coats of polyurethane finish on the pieces, and now I'm going to apply the final finish. And just like every other time, in between the coats, I'm using some 4/0 steel wool just to smooth out any imperfections. And then I will apply the final coat, let it cure overnight, and then I'll do the final rub down to finish it up. And then after I rub it with steel wool, if I feel any remaining bumps, I may just touch it up lightly with some 320 grit sandpaper. Alright, I finished with the steel wool, and the wood is nice and smooth. I've wiped it with a damp rag and dried it off, so now it's ready for the final coat of finish. After this final coat, I'll let it sit for at least 24 hours to make sure that the polyurethane is fully hardened. What I like to do as a final step after applying all the coats of polyurethane is to rub it down with some pumice stone mixed with paraffin oil. That gives it a really nice smooth finish, not too glossy. I'm using a semi-gloss finish on this, and then it just rubs it nice and smooth, and then I'll apply a coat of paste wax on top. Just a little bit of oil, tiny little bit of pumice stone, and then I'll just rub it in the direction of the grain. Since this is an older piece of furniture, I find that rubbing the finish with pumice stone helps to give it a feel that you would expect from this type of furniture. And then just a final coat of wax that I will buff with a clean rag at the end. Here's the finished table back on its legs. So I gotta ask, would you make it?